Hello, everyone. Monica Saare here with Assessments 24/7. Welcome, welcome. I want to do a little bit of housekeeping before we start off. Number one, we are going to be recording this webinar, so you'll have access to it, and it'll be emailed to you later today. And we absolutely want to hear from you. So while these panelists are speaking, we definitely want to hear from you, and you can do that in the Q&A portion. So feel free to ask questions the whole time. We have time at the end to actually answer those questions for you live. We'll get to as many as we can. So that's good. And you know, all of these webinars are created with feedback from you. So we do take a survey at the end, and we only include content that you all have asked for. So when we email the recorded webinar, you'll also have a survey. Please take the time. It's only like 1 minute to fill that out, and we'll continue to create webinars that you all want. So the other last thing for today, we don't have any slides, right? So it's just going to be our wonderful gentleman speaking on the panel. So the best route to take for the quality is to set your video to the section where it's on speaker mode. So you really only see the people that are speaking. We have the Assessments 24/7 team here with us. Thank you everyone for joining. But let's get to it. So I want to just quickly introduce everyone. Our first panelist and very valued client is Chad Q. Brown. Hi, Chad, with Profile LLC. Thanks for joining us.
No problem, Monica. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And our second panelist is Curtis Johnson of the Covey Group. Thank you for joining us. We so appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And last but not least is Gary Couson with the Toro Company. Thank you,
Hello.
Gary. Cool. Well, first up is Chad. So Chad, we're so honored to have you here. I'm going to brag a little bit about what you do. Chad runs Profile LLC, and he provides all sorts of management consultation to athletic organizations, corporations of all sizes. And so, Chad, I'd love to hear more about your business and how you've uniquely used assessments to create success.
Sure. Thank you, Monica. I mean, assessments in the athletic world, and we do a lot of corporate work as well, but assessments is the core of our business. We became, built a relationship with you guys probably 7 or 8 years ago, got to know Tony and Brandon and yourself and the whole team, and everyone's been wonderful. We love our relationship with you, but a long time ago, I was a football coach, college football coach for about 10 years, and the assessment world, I knew of it in the corporate world, but these college athletic departments and even the professional world, they weren't using assessments like the Fortune 500 companies were in hiring. And it really, in my opinion, it was because it was so fast paced. It was, they needed quick, correct information. So the reason assessments are such a huge piece and really the core of what we do is our idea was to build software around your assessments and then be able to distribute it to student athletes or professional athletes. And again, we do a lot of corporate work as well with the hiring, but our niche is really athletics. And so our assessments, our software, ties into your assessment tool. And we believe that if it could do 4 things, we could have success in college and professional athletics. So our software is kind of our niche. That's what's unique about our business. Our software is API and tied into yours. So ours is kind of a shell, and then we can tap into pulling your content catalog into the assessments once people take it. But the 4 things were, number one, you had to be able to do it on a mobile device. And so student athletes, young people, they had to be able to take it on a mobile device. So we built that into the software so they could, take it quickly on that, and everybody was on it and they're used to it. The second thing was it had to be, in our opinion, it had to be done in under 20 minutes. That's subjective, but just the attention span with young people, these longer assessments, Myers-Briggs or something like that, those were pretty heavy, they were long, so it needed to be done in a reasonable amount of time. So that's where we took DISC and motivators, and then we have an in-house assessment. We have a battery of 3 that we use for our world. And then the last 2 things, it needed to give quick, correct information. So when it was done, you guys are so fast, it immediately is done in our software, and the coach has a 25 to 30 page report on the student athlete. And then the information just needed to be simple. I mean, you guys, I think what Assessments 24/7 has taught me is how well you guys, you teach it and you make it simple for the layperson. A lot of this stuff is heavy when you get into a lot of the assessments that are out there. And corporations don't want that. They want quick information. They want answers. And so if we can do those four things, we had a chance to fit into a world that had a void in the assessment land. So hopefully that makes sense, but that's kind of our hook and where Profile came along. And I have a lot of fun doing it because I love the puzzle of people with you guys.
I love it. Do you have any like cool stories? I know you worked a lot with the NFL. Do you have any, quick stories you could share with us? Because we're all NFL fans and we'd love to know any sort of inside info.
Yeah, I mean, there's some I'm not supposed to tell, but obviously there's a lot of them actually. The world of sports, we're a special advisor. I'm a special advisor to the Dallas Cowboys. And the reason it's the Cowboys, so anyone listening, like don't go off this webinar just because I said that, because that hurts me as much as it helps me. But basically in the beginning, when we started to work with the NFL Combine, we worked with every team. But the last 4 years, it's a long story, too long for my time slot to say why we work specifically with the league office and the Cowboys now versus our old days of working with all the teams. But when we worked with all the teams, you and I were talking the other day, and I wrote this down. You wrote up, you gave me a quote. It's how companies and sports organizations, really any organization, you can't afford to use your gut anymore. It's hard to understand people and get better at people, especially when these tools exist, right? So the story I would tell is the San Francisco 49ers were a client, and I still have a great relationship with them. In year 2, Jim Harbaugh, if anybody listening is a sports fan, went to Michigan. He's still there today. And he left the 49ers. And this is when Colin Kaepernick, he's been in the news a lot. He was still the quarterback there. And they hired a guy nobody really remembers. His name was Jim Tom Sula. And he was a defensive line coach. That normally doesn't happen. Normally, they don't hire a coach on staff unless it's a really hot quarterback guy. But they hired this guy because all the players liked him. And I went to present to them in this big, Levi Stadium was being built. So it's mahogany walls and 3 flat screens. And I've got lawyers in the room. And they want to use the assessments throughout the organization to do just what, we all do, is to get better at people, to understand behavior and understand their players and their employees better. Well, I sit down, I put everything up on the screen, and the head coach is in there. He's going to listen to this. And before I start, he stops me and he says, "Chad, I just can't do this." And I don't know this guy at all. And I said, "Coach, just explain. I'm not sure what you mean." He said, "Well," he goes, "I grew up in Pittsburgh. A lot of my friends were, they had tough home lives." And he goes, "I just don't believe in putting labels on people." And I haven't even spoken yet. So I want to say, we don't put labels on people. This is just a tool to help you understand personality and behavior and things that matter to people. But I bite my tongue because I'm just there. And basically he said, "This just isn't for me. I believe that I can go around the country, shake hands, meet people, look them in the eye, and just know if they're a good fit for us." And I said, "Coach, I can't say anything to that. I respect that." And so I still went through my presentation, but he left. And I still had a lot of buy-in from the room, but it never went to the coaching side. We did some things with the personnel, the scouts. But the end of this story is not to be mean, but he got fired in a year. And it's we laugh about it today.
Should have used the assessment.
Yeah, that's not the reason he got fired. But I remember him saying, he uses his gut. And he likes to look people in the eye. And there's so many business owners that do believe that. And I truly believe there's people that are really good at hiring. But if you have the data, it's like, why wouldn't you use it? Don't be naive.
Why not use it? Exactly.
Yeah, and that was your quote. Monica, I stole that. I'm stealing that from you. So
well, thank you.
That's why hopefully that didn't bore anybody, but that's my story.
Well, thank you, Chad. It's so lovely to hear that. We really appreciate you sharing. I think it's, a big testament to the fact that, you've created these custom integrations with assessments to provide very unique offerings to people. So
yeah, thank you.
Love to hear all of that. Thank you. All right.
You guys are great. Thanks for all you guys do for us.
Thank you, Chad. Oh. So up next, we have Curtis E. Johnson, Jr. of the Covey Group. And if you don't mind, I'm going to brag about you a little bit. You're probably our most decorated on the panel today because you are fully DISC Workshop Leader certified through Assessments 24/7. You are also DISC and Motivator certified on your way to becoming an ACP, which just means Advanced Certified Practitioner. So fully, basically an expert in DISC, motivators, Hartman value, critical thinking, same thing, and emotional intelligence and learning styles. And you obviously have more time in your day than I do because Curtis is also running for city commissioner of Fort Pierce, Florida, where he lives. So welcome, Curtis.
Oh.
I want to ask you to definitely, we'd love to hear a story or paint us a picture about what it looks like when you go into a client and provide these DISC workshop leader trainings. And if you could kind of describe for that, what that looks like, I think that'd be wonderful.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me and welcoming me to this. And I certainly feel welcomed. And that's exactly it. What I try to do is help that client, a potential client, walk down a path. Oftentimes, I'm like Chad, walking into a room with either executives or people of nonprofit organizations, and they're having some challenges with the team. The team's just not performing or functioning. Maybe there's been a change in management, potential change in management. They're not having the peak performance that they're looking to have. And I find my way into those rooms. And as a result of that, it's really sitting down and listening to the customer, and much of it's about what's not happening, and they can't quite put their finger on it, and it's a gut feeling. But when I assure them that there's some data that we can show, we can focus in exactly as to what needs to be done and how to specifically begin to address the issues that they're having, you start to see the head and agreement and buy-in that, we're on the right path at that particular point. So much of it is like, making sure that they connect the dots. And it's great that with all of the tools that we have from Assessment 24/7, we can help connect those dots. Oftentimes I get that something's just not right. It's my gut, it's something here. And when you probe a little bit deeper, they really can't put their finger on it. By the time our conversation's over, we've identified specifically what needs to be done. DISC comes to paramount front a lot because it's usually a communication issue. It's usually someone not knowing how to communicate to the team or motivate the team. Maybe there's a new leader and they have a different style and they're trying to figure out the pegs of the wheel and how to make them all fit and work nicely together. So once we begin to unfold what the opportunities will be and how we can begin to help them put that together using the workshops, they're pretty open to it. And the vision becomes very, very sharp, and we focus in on it. And it usually leads to, a DISC assessment, followed very closely by a full day workshop and taking them through a lot of different exercises to begin the team building and to focus in right on those issues and surface them. And so that people can now be aware of what those issues are and begin to address them.
That's wonderful. Do you have any, stories or anything you want to share about a particular training or?
Well, absolutely. You mentioned earlier that I am running for city council here in my hometown.
Yes.
And
good luck.
Yes. And it's funny because when I first started this exercise, I too was a person that was subjected to a lot of assessments in my prior corporate America career. And I believe in them. And they were helpful in me understanding how to really work the sales process and sell to people, because I could understand and recognize some of the behavior that I got. And, it's interesting that, looking at city council and city government and municipalities, I do a lot of work in coaching in those arenas already. And a lot of it's around team building. And so, I often kid that, I was having so much fun, on the outside. I've now jumped right into the fire of politics and getting into the city council. So I may be shooting myself in the foot because I may not be able to go into some of these cities and municipalities and do some of these workshops. And, I'll probably be too busy trying to work on some platform issues in my own city. But, I find that it's very interesting and it's very applicable. And,
or maybe, Curtis, you're going to save the world, right? Or that.
if anything, I'm going to start with my community because this will work community-wide as well.
I love it. Well, wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to share before I move on?
Well, I've just one other thing. I've
Sure.
been probably the youngest tenured one on the call of the panel experts using DISC. Been on board now a couple years, and it's been really remarkable. I have found that the modification, the tweaks and updates have been spot on. I know when you launch the actual workshops and the DISC workshop, trust-based leader workshops, peer to leader, those have been spot on with some of the issues I've identified. And just to have those tools already kind of baked and don't have to put it all together, but you can tweak it a little bit here and there to kind of fit what you're doing. That's been remarkable. So I would just say, keep up the good work and continue to be responsive to us and providing those tools, because it's really been helpful and really, really helpful. And I'm looking forward to continuing my progression and getting to the master level with all of them.
Good. Well, you are so welcome, Curtis. And that is all due to Jen Larson and her team. She runs training and they're just dynamos over there, pumping out information and content. So,
Absolutely.
well, I'm so glad you're here. Well, thank you for sharing. I'm going to move on to our last, but definitely not least panelist, Gary Couson from Toro. I want to brag a little bit about you too, Gary. The company, I'm sure some of you might be familiar with the Toro company. They manufacture lawnmowers, but we're talking heavy duty lawnmowers for golf courses, hotels, commercial property of all kinds. Gary, you shared with me all sorts of sports fields. So football fields, lawn bowling, which I thought was kind of funny, tennis courts that have grass, and they do this in 125 different countries. So Gary, thank you for joining us. Tell us a little bit about your responsibilities and your role, and then would love to hear you walk us through your experience with creating a custom assessment with us at Assessments 24/7.
Sure. Thanks, Monica, for the invite. Again, we're located in Minneapolis, and I work in what we call the commercial division for Toro. We manufacture equipment for greens and tees and roughs and sports fields, very specific equipment. And our channel is through 26 distributors, which have about 350 salespeople. So they do the direct selling for us. Here at Toro, my position is product training manager, and it's my responsibility to train the salespeople at distributors on how to sell. And we have a 5-step, so about over a year and a half ago, we were looking for an assessment that would complement our 5 steps of the Toro selling system. And we've had that all for quite a few years, but we never were able to assess anybody on if they were actually absorbing how to use the Toro selling system. Because normally it would be a presentation for an hour and a half. They go away. We didn't know if they got it or not. Sales numbers reflected that, yeah, they're getting it pretty good. So we went to with a search for some type of an assessment that we could assess the 5 steps. And that led us to Monica. We got hold of Monica and her group. And the key to this was that we were able to modify it to what our Toro selling system was. That was the key to the whole 24/7. So there's 50 sales scenarios in there, 10 questions each. And that assesses again to each one of our steps. Now we've got a playbook on what do we train on, because we know how the assessments, the report at the end of the month or whatever tells us where they're weak or maybe where they're very, very good. And we can now train to that part of the Toro selling system. And it's worked out quite well because of the modification that we can do. The bigger piece is that it's being compared to thousands of other salespeople that are in consultative type selling. So to give you an idea how that works here with our distributors, they're calling on accounts. Typically they'll have over 100 accounts to call on, but they're constantly seeing the same customer. So there's a heck of a relationship there between the golf course, let's say, and a distributor and a salesperson. And there's a certain process they have to go through to be able to come up with the solutions on a golf course or a sports field. It could be turf related they typically call on the agronomist or horticulture type person at the sports field or golf course. And all our equipment is geared toward that. So it can get very complicated on making sure we have the right solution, especially on a golf course or a sports field, because if we make a mistake on the grass, not good. So a year's went by now. We started our certification program for salespeople in November, and this is a huge part of that. It's working out very, very well. And it comes back to the customization that we could do with the 24/7. And our distributors like it. That doesn't always happen. So they're enthused about it as much as we are, especially the sales managers at a distributor. They can now assess their people and see how they're doing. So all the way around, from Toro to the distributor to the customer, it's been a great experience.
That's wonderful, Gary. And you always tell me, what's your line that you always use, that your lawnmowers they're so good that you could shave with them, or what is it that you always say?
We were talking a couple days ago on this presentation, and to give you an idea on a golf green, if you're a golfer anyway, we now are able to mow the grass less than 1/8 inch. Typically it's 90 thousandths of an inch. And as mentioned here, you can almost shave with it. That's how precision it is. So that's a piece of equipment that goes across the green. They mow it every day in a different direction, so there's no grain, so the ball is perfect. And we hear about it that doesn't work very well.
That's great.
It's an interesting world out there.
Well, thank you, Gary. Thank you, gentlemen, for sharing. I want to open it up for questions. And Suzette or Jen, did you get any good questions that came through for the group?
Yes, actually, so the first one came in for Chad specifically. Have you considered going after NBA clients?
Let me get off mute here. We have. We actually are in talks with a lot of them, and COVID-19 did not help us at all. So the thing is, like, my background is football. We talk about the NFL stuff, but college basketball is probably our biggest client base in our, if you look at our clients. We have a lot of college basketball, and a lot of the word has spread. And so with the NBA, I'm just elaborating a little bit. They do a draft just like the NFL does. It's usually they have a combine in Chicago every year, and this year they're not sure what they're going to do. So the draft has actually been moved back to October, which normally it's in the summer. And so what Dallas and our software does is we have the ability to text message the link to take the disc and the motivators and the values assessments. And so we're in discussions about how to use that with some of the teams, and that way they can send the link out, get it to some of the teams, and get the information in-house in the software. So we really want to, but everything's a little bit on hold right now. So we're going to see how the season goes when they start up here in Orlando, and we're going to go meet with some people. So I like how you're thinking, Adrian. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. And then our next question, I think this wasn't to anyone in particular, but I think I'm going to ask Curtis, just because you have more of, you're sending these out quite often and are not in a particular niche. So do any of you have advice for someone new to using assessments?
I'll take a stab at it. I think it's exactly that. I started with the niche that I was most comfortable with myself. I work with nonprofits, so I tend to work with nonprofits, emerging leaders, so young youth people on college campuses, and then I use my network of knowing that I had some people in municipalities and governments, and by networking and just having conversations with managers and leaders, you can quickly begin to identify where the gaps are and where the challenges are. And that led me to some initial success right up front. And it helped me to get my foot in the door. And I still recall my very, very, very first workshop with that. And I was quite nervous. It was the first time, although I thought I would, I knew I would do well, but, still your first workshop, you just didn't know. But it was with someone that I had a relationship with, and they were in city government, and they were having some challenges with their team. And this was a great way for them to bring in someone from the outside to walk the team through a number of exercises and really kind of surface some of the challenges they were having as a team. So I would say absolutely find your niche. If it's, where you are currently and who you're networking with, maybe a great opportunity to begin having some of these conversations. You'll be surprised.
Yeah, I agree. I'd like to add to that, Curtis. We work with a lot of consultants all over the world, and sometimes new folks come to us and say, I want to be a consultant to everyone, and I think that is a mistake. I think you have to focus on a niche or, a group of industries that you're familiar with, maybe you have contacts with. I had a new consultant one time. She's like, oh, I want to be everything to all people. And I'm like, well, didn't you used to work in telecommunications? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, well, let's just look up what kind of numbers does that bring in a year just in the US? And it was like $6 billion or something. And I'm like, is that not enough for you? Focusing, I think sometimes people think, oh, I'm not going to make as much. It's not going to be as lucrative. But I think focusing is when you actually do make more. So I agree with you, Curtis, on that one for sure. Suzette or Jen, do we have any others?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Curtis. That actually wrapped a couple of questions that got answered into one there with someone was asking about a particular niche, and that was great. That was a great answer. One thing I think I would like to ask each of you, if that's okay with you, Monica, is we had a couple of questions that I'd like if you could sort of address each one. So for Curtis, Gary, and Chad, if each of you could take a minute or two to answer these. Number one, what are some of the biggest hurdles that our assessments platform has helped you overcome? And with that, how has COVID-19 affected your business, and what have you been doing to counteract it? So sort of kind of all in one, any hurdles, how have you overcome any of those, and especially with the COVID-19 sort of stay-at-home orders and different things we've had to deal with?
So Chad, do you want to take that first? You already sort of mentioned that COVID's obviously affected some of your clientele. Feel free.
Yeah, sure. It's been, I was on the phone more with just people that had maybe heard about us or gotten some of our marketing materials when COVID-19 hit, more than I'd been in a long time. And I think it was people were intrigued with assessments. There's a lot of assessments out there. Talking to you guys, and in my experience, that leadership development, employee development, personal development arena really picked up its pace because people are at home. They don't have as much to do. Everybody was waiting to kind of see what was next. So we did a lot of training, a lot of coaching. Hiring slowed down, but a lot of the self-awareness and leadership development, and there were a lot of succession things going on as well, where someone may be retiring and who was going to move up the chain and who was going to move in a different position. So a lot of our clients wanted to discuss those. So we were busy, and so it helped us a lot because it was a good time for people to reflect and look at their teams and look in the mirror and get better at themselves.
Great. Curtis, you want to take that? Any hurdles you've overcome with assessments, and then also how you're dealing with the COVID?
Right. So absolutely. I much like Chad has mentioned, the phone started ringing, believe it or not. We've been able to lock in a few contracts where organizations are really investing into their sales organizations now because they're having to do a lot more virtually. And so the skills and those competencies that may need to be polished up, or some of those challenged areas that people may be having with this, are things that need to be coached to. So we're seeing some opportunities to work with them with that and do some large workshops virtually. So, I think a little bit of a challenge for me is that I usually do my workshops face to face, and you get the interaction and the team building and all the stuff going on in the room. That's been a little bit of a challenge with it, but yet and still we try to adapt to it. And, with COVID-19, it's been something that we've just had to adapt to, and really, we have continued to, form some partnerships, and been able to really kind of connect in this virtual world and help some people that now are thrust into it that are challenged with it. And so that brings about a whole nother level of coaching. And by having that DISC assessment, you can approach it from a data standpoint and really kind of understand how to work through it with them and help them overcome some of those challenges.
That's great. Thank you. And I agree with you. I think, there's definitely some growing pains for some of the consultants transferring, into the digital world. But I do want everyone to think about this, that the scalability of that is greater. So think about recording some of your webinars and trainings and being able to, scale up. So in a way, it could be good long-term, but I know there's definitely some growing pains. And so Gary, tell us a little bit about how you all have been dealing with COVID. I know it's definitely changed things for your sales folks.
Definitely changes the landscape. But there's also a positive to it. Since we launched the certification program in November, everybody's at home, so they're getting caught up on all the assessments and all of the stuff that would normally work, they wouldn't do it till the end of the year. So I've been very busy, but it's good because I'm getting it done now. They know how to get into the computer, how to take it, how to track. So it's actually been a positive, and very, very busy because we're all at home now, but they're catching up on all their assignments and how the system works and understanding it more than waiting till the last part of the year, which they try to get caught up on. So it's actually worked out quite well.
That's great. Well, thank you. Thank you. Suzette, any others, or we're wrapping up?
Yeah, we have a couple more. I know we have a few more minutes, so I'll go ahead. We've had some good questions come in. So Matthew specifically asked Curtis. Curtis, you mentioned youth. Have you used DISC with a younger, under 18 audience?
Absolutely. Yes, I have. Great question. There's a nonprofit organization here in my town, and I've modified it, not per se to take the assessments, but doing some of the other exercises and helping them kind of self-identify some of the behaviors. We've not delved directly into providing that direct feedback, but we've been able to help them understand observable behaviors and what those understandings are around the DISC model. So it's been very helpful in helping them relate to each other, particularly when they're working on projects together and trying to get the best out of each person and making sure each person contributes their very best based on, how they're kind of behaving and some of the behaviors that they have. So absolutely, I find it very adaptable to under 18. And recently, before COVID, I was working with some college freshmen, actually, going through a live and learning program on the campus, and found it very applicable to work with them on a school-based project, and really turned around the numbers on that.
Thank you so much. Very, very good. And the next question is for Chad. Have you used DISC pre-college, for example, to help high school athletes through the recruiting process?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love the question because this comes up a lot with youth. So we actually just started working with Nike, and there's a lot of moving parts with these shoe companies, meaning they a lot of times they deal with youth soccer, or they deal with youth basketball, or baseball. Their reach is amazing, and it's international. But the basketball group we've started to work with a lot, and there's a group in called the EYBL, which is the Elite Youth Basketball Group. It's about 400 teams, and 400 student athletes, 40 teams, and they're usually the best of the best. And people want to, basically, they see the assessments being used to get to know these kids better, help their teams. And, I was always taught, right around that 12 to 13 mark is kind of a cutoff. I don't know if there's science to that, but I've given it to my kids there, right around that 12, 13, and I get the results back and I go, yep, you talk too much, or I'm kidding, but do it with my kids. But with the young high school athletes, we're starting to do it more. And I think it really helps them because I go back and go, man, I mean, I had no self-awareness tool. When you're that young, you're trying to figure it out. So, listening to Curtis, how he uses it, and I just can relate because I do think it's really helping, even the younger kids in pre-college.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. So the DISC assessment that you're currently using is validated for anyone age 13 and older. So you can absolutely use it for junior high aged kids. And I always say, man, if I had this DISC information when I was that young, it really would change, I think, all of our lives. So because of that, in the future, it's not happening now today, but we are working to validate an even younger version of the DISC. It's a huge project, so it's going to take us time, but it is something that we're working on. So it'll be validated for even younger than 13, but as it stands now, it's 13 years of age and older that it's validated for, so you can give it to teenage children, and we really highly recommend it. I mean, that's a big passion of our CEO, Brandon Parker, and he's working in tandem with Kathy Hampson, who's in charge of our certifications and training, and they're working really hard on that project. So that's, you know, future endeavor, so look out for that.
Okay, great answers, guys, so far. So I have a little more specific question here, and anyone can take it. I don't know, one of you guys can maybe raise your hand if you want to take it. But from Richard, in using DISC, timing is everything. If you have a 6-week and 1-day course, what week would you recommend submitting the DISC analysis to your clients?
Say that one more time, Suzette. It's how many weeks?
It's a little specific. So in using DISC, timing is everything. If you have a 6-week and 1-day course, what week would you recommend submitting the DISC analysis to your clients? And I think maybe what he's asking is at what point in sort of a training would be best to give the DISC assessment is what Richard's asking.
I'll take a quick stab at it because in my prior corporate life, I was exposed when we first came into the training program. I would approach it that way personally, just so that you have a baseline, so that you'll kind of know how to maybe tailor some things and tweak some trainings and make sure that the trainers are able to train to the level of the DISC model, meaning that those that are more faster paced, you're meeting them where they are. The ones that are your C's, that you're making sure you get them the data and everything that they really need and allowing them time to process it. So my personal bias on that question would be to introduce it as early as possible and begin to integrate that and make sure you're always checking along the benchmarks as you move through the training to make sure you're bringing everybody along that learning continuum. You know, as an ex-trainer myself, you know, we know the material and we've probably trained it so much. It's really not about us. It's about who we're trying to bring through the training. And so I would utilize this tool to help bring my classes along and make sure we don't leave anybody behind. And so that was just my approach to it.
Perfect. And then I think we have time. It's up to you, Monica. Let me know. I was going to end it with the same question for each panelist. We have sort of one more question that I'm going to blend in. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, let's do one more. Absolutely.
All right. So number one, and this is for each of you to answer, and why don't we go ahead and go Chad, Gary, Curtis, just in the order of my screen here. First part of the question is, what key marketing methods do you use to promote your assessment tools and services? And on top of that, why DISC and not any of the others that may be out there in the world?
I get to go first. So key marketing methods, I don't know if there's a key marketing method because every business is different. We do a little bit of everything with emailing and social and things like that, but the best marketing for us is referral. I think once people take the assessment and then you can consult back to them and they can actually feel it, that to me is the best marketing in the assessment world in my experience so far. Now, as far as those other assessments go, I actually love this question because there's a bunch of them out there, you know, Strength Finders and Myers-Briggs and so on and so forth. I think they are all good. I mean, I really do. Like, I think if you have the time to study those, take them yourself, feel them, it really comes down to like what speaks to you. What do you feel? And the reason I like these assessments is because anybody taking the initiative to get better at people, I'm in on. But I do think no matter what assessment you use, it's kind of like a diet or a workout. You're not going to get stronger or you're not going to lose weight unless you take the rules of that diet and consistently kind of chip away at that. You've got to eat well. You've got to kind of work out. You've got to do the things that those things require and basically reinforce them each week. And so if it is DISC, if it is motivators, if it's another one, just chip away at it. I think the mistake people make in our world is they take DISC or they take any of these assessments, they do it for a day training, and then they leave it alone. You know, Gary brought up a good one, like people wait to the last minute. It's as leaders, managers, CEOs, COOs, whatever, you know, whoever it may be, if you use it as a part of your culture and chip away at that, I think it really enhances so much. But I think they're all good.
Gary, do you want to talk about that? You know, Gary chose our Sales IQ Plus, which is kind of a unique assessment, and we customized it. Was there one particular reason why you chose that one over the other ones out there?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially when I got a hold of Monica and your group, we were able to sit down and ask, this is how we'd like to customize it. And that's what come through on changing the scenarios, the 24/7 assessment, what's needed with our sales group. And we don't really market it because it's part of our certification program. So they have to take it if they want to be a total sales certified person, if you will. So it's a little different than the rest. But in any case, it's the best thing we've ever had since I've been here, and that's 35 years. We've been able to assess our salespeople. We've never been able to do that before. So.
That's great. That's great, Gary. Thank you. And then Curtis, this will be the last thing, and then we'll wrap it up. So, why the DISC? Does that work best for your executive leadership training and things like that?
Absolutely. I've used some of the others too. I think it's the total packaging. I've looked at DISC at other organizations, but I found it's more well-rounded here, and the materials, the support really kind of won me over. It was that support that made the difference in my world when it came to this. Someone talked about the marketing approach. Yeah, we dibble and dabble a little bit on social, on Facebook, you know, Twitter and Instagram. But for me, really, it's working the network. It's really spending probably a lot more time on LinkedIn and connecting with people, kind of seeing where some of those issues are and what's surfacing out there, and then reaching out to people and having some conversations. It's for me, it's making so many phone calls and talking to people virtually that's really driving this.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for your time. We really do appreciate you being here. I'm going to quickly share my screen, and just in closing, just remind everyone, if you're at all interested, can you guys see my screen okay? I can't really tell. You know, contact us if you are interested in custom assessments, API integration like what Chad's doing, or becoming a DISC workshop leader, certified individual. We can help. Here's our contact information. And just a reminder for everyone to complete the survey by Friday, and you'll be eligible to win 2 assessments. So with that, again, I really, maybe you couldn't see that, sorry. Suzette, can you send out the hello@assessments247.com email?
Sure, yeah, in the chat.
Yeah. Feel free to contact us if you have any questions at all. And again, really, truly appreciate all the gentlemen for joining us. Thanks to our internal team for helping support. And I hope you all have a really wonderful day and continue to kick butt. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
Take care.